what's going on right now in politics has already happened before. I mean, the parallels are almost chilling. We got a Trudeau as Canada's prime minister right now. Western resource development's under attack. Government spending is out of control. Inflation harming citizens and interest rates are on the rise. It sounds just like the 80s, late 70s. The current economic path now, though, is unsustainable and is going to come to a crashing halt eventually. And you know, there's lots of blame to throw around. Conservative governments are usually a little better than liberal ones in times like this. I mean, Mulroney continued with spending increases and deficit budgets when Pierre Trudeau exited the scene. In Alberta, the Progressive Conservatives under Premiers Lougheed and Getty, they borrowed heavily while pouring tax funds into a series of failed corporate welfare schemes. Now, the bubble finally burst in the 1990s for pretty much everybody. Debt servicing costs were taking a massive bite from government budgets while citizens just weren't ready to accept more tax increases. So governments at all levels, with every political stripe, had to cut spending. There's no getting around it. Federally, the Chrétien government balanced the budget, while provincially, we had Ralph Klein and Mike Harris bringing spending under control in Alberta and Ontario. And yeah, in Saskatchewan, even the NDP out there, they had to face economic reality. Roy Romanow cut spending by 10% in one budget and managed to balance the books in 1994. Wasn't easy, though. Unions, lobby groups, individuals, they screamed bloody murder through the 90s as the cuts were applied across the country. But at that time, at least their protests were unheeded. Canadians wanted to see balanced budgets, and they wanted to see governments cutting spending. Eventually, though, the cycle turned. With balanced budgets, times became good again. Economies picked up, and the governments began to open the spending floodgates again. Even in Alberta, under Klein, the spending began to rise quickly at the end of the 90s. Ironically, it was when Klein started increasing expenditures when his provincial support started to flag. You know, citizens are fine with low government spending, but politicians just can't resist increasing the budgets. It's an easier way to manage the government than being fiscally responsible. Just toss more money at it. That administrative sloth, though, does come with a price over time. And in 1999, the federal government returned to deficit budgets, and in Alberta, it took till 2008, but deficit financing has returned here as well, and we haven't managed to produce a balanced budget since. Low interest rates, they allow governments to get away with deficit financing for a time, but as we're seeing today, the rates don't stay low forever. What goes down must come up. Just servicing the federal debt alone is going to cost an estimated $34.7 billion in 2022-2023. That's assuming interest rates stop rising, of course. And every province is flushing money down the toilet on debt servicing, too. It's interest costs, guys. It's money on the credit cards that we could really spend in better places. Now, the Trudeau government, this is where it got me going on this, recently called for departments to find $15 billion in savings. I thought, wow, are they finally going to do like Chrétien and be responsible liberals and do some cuts? But no, then they quickly pivoted to say, well, we're not going to cut $15 billion in spending. We just want to find those savings and we'll shift it to other departments. So in other words, they won't even talk about cutting the spending. The hard reality governments and citizens need to face is that governments spend too much. And yes, I'm including citizens in that statement because, hey, we're the ones who keep turning to the government for every service or problem. People want every pet project funded, every foreign cause supported, and every industry subsidized, or they'll take their votes elsewhere. And I know it doesn't apply to everybody. It applies to enough of them. And whether we like it or not, people tend to vote for whatever politician blows the most sunshine up their butt at election time, and they tend to shy away from politicians offering a realistic fiscal platform. People won't change their demands of governments until they start directly seeing the cost of spending, but we are starting to see it now. Deficit spending is fostering inflation while taxes increase to try and keep up with the spending. The rising cost of living is hurting everybody, along with the taxes. Taxes alone right now eat up 45.3% of the average family's income, while food, clothing, and shelter only make up 35.6%. Citizens are loath to admit it, but they can't hide from it forever. When enough people realize that government is the largest expense in their life and they just can't afford it anymore, they're finally going to start demanding cuts. The question with spending cuts and austerity isn't a matter of if they're going to happen, it's a matter of when. I mean, the laws of economics are as immutable as those of gravity, and the spending will have to be brought back into check eventually. We just can't keep living on the credit cards. The longer we wait to cut spending, though, the harder it's going to be when those cuts come. An increasing segment of the population has become dependent upon government jobs and programs, and that segment's going to suffer when the government's spending starts contracting. It's going to be ugly as they try to adapt. But the sooner, the better. We're on a slow-motion collision course with an inevitable fiscal reality check. The sooner we can ring the alarm bells, the better. And right now is the time. We got to start reining in spending and reducing future pain. And right now, it feels like the warnings are falling on deaf ears, but hopefully citizens start to get the wax out and start listening soon. Because when the citizens move, the politicians will follow. Eventually, they always do.